He's an acclaimed multi-award winning photographer from Auckland, New Zealand. Remarkable ability to capture the essence of Formula One racing. Utilizing natural light and color to the fullest effect, he has redefined the boundaries of sports photography. With over 32 years of experience and over 520 Grand Prix, Darren has become synonymous with Formula One, leaving an inedible mark on the industry. In 2005, he was awarded the prestigious honorary fellowship by the Royal Photographic Society, a testament to his excellence and distinguished ability in this chosen field. This accolade recognizes his remarkable contributions to photography, particularly with Formula One. His unique style and unwavering commitment to pushing artistic boundaries have solidified his legacy as a true visionary in Formula One photography. Here he is. A warm applause. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My photographic journey from little boy at racetracks all over the UK, face pressed up against a fence, watching the race cars, but almost as intently watching the photographers doing what they were doing, dreaming one day of emulating them and standing on their side of the fence. To a number of years later, achieving that dream and becoming a photographer of Formula One. 540 Grand Prix under my belt now, 35-year career, an ongoing career, to eventually standing here in front of you to talk about what I do at this Xposure event in Sharjah. As a passionate believer in the art of photography and a lover of the sport that I'm privileged to shoot, all I ever really try to do when I'm at a racetrack is get across to the people who are going to see my pictures just what the passion that I feel for the sport. The emotions that it elicits in me when I see a racing car going fast, the speed, the color, the noise, the passion, the glamour, the piranha pool of competition of young men, best drivers in the world, fighting tooth and nail to beat each other on fantastic circuits in wonderful countries all over the globe. So when Simon asked me to stand on stage and talk to you, I thought, what shall I do? And I settled on choosing 9 pictures that span my career. The oldest one is 30 years old, almost to the day, taken 30 years ago. The most recent one shot at the Las Vegas Grand Prix last November. I'll talk about some stories behind the pictures, my inspirations, some of the planning that went into them, and just give you an idea of how I go about the job. So let's start with number 1. This is a picture of a Jaguar Formula One car, and it's testing, a winter test at the Valencia circuit in Spain. And what it's doing is undertaking a Michelin, the French tire manufacturer. They run an artificially wet tire test. As you can imagine, in Spain, it doesn't rain that much. So Michelin dug out a great big lake on the inside of the circuit. And then every 15 minutes, a big water tanker goes, scoops up a load of water, they shut the track, pull the cars off, and he goes and circulates around the circuit and dumps water everywhere. A big clock in the pit lane starts at 15 minutes, and the cars are released onto the circuit for 15 minutes. It doesn't take long because of the unbelievable efficiency of these, what we call monsoon tires or extreme wet weather tires. They shed an incredible amount of water. So it doesn't take long for a dry line. A dry line is what we call where the natural movement of the cars across the circuit. A dry line appears, and this picture will disappear quite fast. So you've got to kind of be ready for each 15-minute period. This picture was taken the last lap of the last day of the test. He's come out of a corner, which you can't see, down the back of the hill, come up towards where my position is. It's taken on a 600mm lens, Fuji Velvia film, for all you older guys, remember what that was like. And he's come up towards me and created this gorgeous plume behind. Now, the vernacular in Formula One, in motorsport in general, is that we call that a rooster tail, because from side on, if you could see the carbon side on, you've got this gorgeous plume that's pushed out the back of the car, like a cockerel's fantastic tail. The size of the ball of spray is because of the efficiency of the tires to shed the water, but also because of the aerodynamics working over the car. And as the air comes back underneath the car and across the top, the big wing at the back, it pushes the air up, and that's what makes it go miles up in the air. And of course, it's a gorgeous effect. And photographers, when we get a wet track on a sunny day, it's just manna from heaven. You're just desperate to get out on track and make the most of it. As a picture, what it means to me, and I don't want this to sound arrogant, but I don't think I could ever improve it. I took it in 2002, in December 2002, and I've never, even though I've done lots of tests at different circuits, some wet weather tests, we've never had those conditions again. And it's kind of gone down within the folklore of Formula One photographers, our little group of people that travel the world, as kind of the best wet weather test that there ever was. And there were only 4 photographers there. So that was pretty fortunate on my part. And it's kind of, as long as Formula One cars don't materially change and start hovering off the ground or sprout a crazy different shape, it's kind of, it almost could have been taken last week. And if you've never seen a Grand Prix car before, you might not know it's a Formula One car specifically, but you know that's a racing car. So next one. Now, I wonder how many of you know who this is. It's Michael Schumacher, 7 times Formula One world champion. I hesitate to use the word legendary because it's an overused word, but this guy is a legend in our sport and kind of transcends all of sport, really. This picture was taken at the 1998 German Grand Prix, Michael's home race. He was a Ferrari driver at the time. He'd won 2 world championships in the mid-90s for a different team, moved to Ferrari, and it was all about, is he going to deliver a title? Well, he did, because from 2000 through to 2004, he won every world title. So he's a 7 times world champion. The picture is special to me because you would never, ever get this kind of opportunity to shoot this kind of guy. And the circumstances that came to me being able to get the shot were the result of taking a bit of a kind of risk. You can see the blue kind of area behind the driver, behind Michael. When you get out to a Grand Prix circuit, you're generally taken around to circuits like this where they don't have a perimeter road, and the truck or a minivan, that kind of thing, will take you out onto the circuit, and you choose where to get out. You shout to the driver, I want to get out here, and you get out. Now, Hockenheim Ring is the name of the circuit. Hockenheim was a fantastic, really kind of 2 extremes of kind of what to work with, because you have this really kind of Teutonic German concrete bowl, which is the start-finish area, and where 150,000 people will sit and cheer him on. And then the cars turned right and went out into the forest. And when I say forest, I mean like really, really dense, dark forest. And it was a special place as a photographer because it's now gone. They changed the circuit, they ripped up the track, and they filled in all the areas. And we lost that kind of magic of that place. When the truck is coming down to the corner where I got out, 99% of time, you get out and you go and stand by those blue boards over the other side, because that's a position that gives you a nice shot as the cars come down the straight to you and pitch into the right-hander that's behind him. I'd thought, you know what, I'm going to take a bit of a flyer. I'm going to get off and turn driver's right, so I'm going to come into this kind of area of trees. Maybe there's some pictures. We had beautiful light that morning. Maybe there's some pictures of kind of car flickering through the trees and kind of going through the corner. So let's take a risk. Of course, all the other photographers are like, oh, there goes Heath, mucking about in the woods. He's going to miss out. So the session starts. It's a 45-minute session of cars out on the track. They shatter the silence because when you're in the woods before the session and after the session, there's no noise other than birds chirping, woodpeckers hitting the trees. You know, it really is like that. And then suddenly, this caterwaul bark of racing cars just shatters the silence, which of course I love, you know, but it's an incredible kind of contrast. About 5 minutes into the session, I'm thinking, I'm not really getting this. It's not really working. Those photographers over there are going to have a right laugh. Round the corner comes the Ferrari, and it's not working properly. And that was rare because this car won a lot of races. And it's Michael Schumacher. Now, where's he going to park the car? Because he's not got enough juice to get back all the way back. It's like a 2-mile drive to get back to the pits. So he's not going to do that. Is he going to pull up left in front of the other photographers? Or is he going to pull up right in front of me? Well, you know where he pulled up. He pulled up in front of me. And he parks the car, almost ran over my feet as he came into the area, parks the car, and he's thinking, because he knows where the photographers are, he's thinking there's no photographers around here. That's all cool. He gets out of the car, takes his helmet off, turns around and sees me. Turns to the marshals, the track marshals, and they're supposed to be looking after what's happening on the circuit. But obviously, Michael Schumacher turned up, so they're looking at the car. So he says, to stop me getting pictures of the car, he says to the marshals, you stand there, 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 and there, around the car. So they formed like a Praetorian Guard around the car. I didn't say anything to him, but I felt like saying, I don't give a monkeys about your car. I just care about you. I've got half an hour at least of just me and Michael. Special, special time. And then there ensued over the next 30 minutes a real kind of cat and mouse, kind of, you know, me creeping through the trees. I've never hunted, I've never desired to hunt. I guess, like all of you, I hunt pictures. But it was really kind of bizarre how he's quite a camera-shy guy, so he was moving away, but he didn't want to move too far away because he doesn't want someone to, namely me, to photograph his car. So I'm creeping through the trees, and you had kind of comical moments where he's looking inside, I'm framing up a picture, and then I'd tread on a twig, you know, it'd be, and he'd turn and he'd look into the darkness, but he couldn't really see me. With about 5 minutes to go, I'm thinking I haven't nailed this. I haven't got the picture. Of course, it's Fuji Velvia film. I always shot Fuji Velvia. Love the contrast and the color rendition of it. But I didn't have a confirmation screen on the back of the camera. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to bracket, and I'm going to, you know, use different lenses. It's a shot on a 200mm lens. And then he stepped into a nice area. I got down quite close to the Armco, to the steel barriers that are run along the side. This triptych of kind of a group of leaves, beautifully lit, and he dropped his head. And I'm sure, like a lot of you as photographers, the specialness of the moment really doesn't strike you until you get the picture on the glass, on the light table, or on the back of your camera these days. But I got 3 shots, bang, bang, bang. This is the middle one of the 3. The others are slightly different head position. And you can imagine how pleased I was. And you can imagine how upset the other photographers were, the other side of the circuit, when they came and they'd missed it all. the picture has taken on, as some of you may know about Michael Schumacher, the picture has taken on a different significance because of what happened to the poor man at the end of his Grand Prix career. When he retired, he was skiing in the Swiss French Alps, I'm not sure which one, and he had an accident and had tremendous head injury and has suffered, traumatic brain injuries as a result. And we haven't seen him since that accident. So it takes on a kind of different feel for me with time. Time is something, obviously we all reflect on things as time goes by. And it's almost, he's I don't know, maybe he was scratching his nose, I can't remember, but I like to think it's kind of more looks as a contemplative feel to it, and you reflect on, and certainly people who buy the print are they'll often mention that it means something to them as fans of Michael Schumacher and relative to what has happened to him. Now, a racing car going fast, that's what we all love when we think of Formula One, we think of racing cars. This is the reigning world champion, Max Verstappen. He's the reigning world champion now. He wasn't the world champion then. And he's turning into the first corner at the Shanghai International Circuit for the 2018 Chinese Grand Prix. And he's turning in at about 155 miles an hour. It's an amazing place to watch the cars, or to be that close, and they come past you really. You get that kind of whoosh as they go by. And he's pitched the car in, and it's an off-camber, which means the car is tilted that way, but turning that way, uphill right-hander into the second turn. You can get an idea of the kind of load of the car. If you can see, here you can see that the tire is rippling. You can see where it says Pirelli, and you can almost see the side of the wheel. It shows the tremendous force that's working on that tire. How they don't separate from the wheel rim, I just don't know. Obviously, I went to this corner because of these sparks. Sparks are created from a Formula One car by what we call the plank. Underneath the car, it runs underneath the driver from just back from the front wheels to just where you can see the main sparks emanating from underneath the car. And within that plank, it's not made of wood, it's made of composite material, but it does look like a plank. In that plank are about 9 titanium studs. They're only about so big, but they're there as a legal requirement to judge how and to kind of mitigate against the teams running the car too low, because the lower you run a car, generally the faster it goes. So within the rules of the formula, they can't run the cars too low. So the sparks, so the titanium skid studs, we call them skid plates, but they're studs really, they are there to show how much wear. So the teams, because everything is pushed to the nth degree within Formula One, the teams will run that car as low as they can, wear away 2 or 3 millimeters of the titanium, but then no more. So as a photographer, you've got to get that shot within the first, say, 3 laps of that car, because he's sparking at places all around the circuit. Certain places he sparks more than others, and some cars, particularly the Red Bull, because of the way the designer sets his cars up, they spark a lot. We all know that the Red Bull sparks a lot, all the photographers do. So he went past, goes into the corner. This is taken, as I said, in 2018, so it's digital. Pulled my loop onto the back of the screen, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that these lattice work of the wire fence that I've got, the camera is pushed hard and fast up against, with no hood, up against the wire fence to try and lose that, a blur. I also, with a paint pen, whenever you'll see me out on a circuit with a paint pen, it looks like I'm graffitiing, but I'm not, I'm coloring in the kind of fence, because you make the darker you make it, if you make it black, it registers less. So you can go to circuits. I'll be in Shanghai in a few weeks' time for this year's Grand Prix, and I'll be able to see in various levels of patina what year I was, there, and there, which is quite nice. I was mortified when I saw these. And I thought, what am I going to do? You know, it looks like a fault to me. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll ask Brad, who's my technician in London, who I send pictures back to after each day of the race weekend. He works on them overnight in the UK, and then he sends them back to me, and I send them to clients or put them on Instagram or all those things that we do. But I thought, no way. When I put it on the computer screen back in the media room, there's probably, I don't know, 300, and they've all got the wire in. There's no way. He'll never work with me again if I ask him to do that. So I lived with it. And I'm glad I did, because I posted it the next day on Instagram, and the reaction was incredible. People asked me, how did you do this? How did you do that? How have you got those to register like this, like that? I could have said, well, you know, because I'm a genius, but I would front it up and was completely honest and said it was a mistake. But it's kind of a lesson for me the reaction to this picture, because I strive for perfection, like a lot of us, in my work, in our work. But this taught me that actually mistakes, if you like, or occurrences can really add to the picture and add to people's enjoyment of it. Now, this is Fernando Alonso celebrating winning the 2010 Korean Grand Prix. It was a pretty momentous race weekend in Formula One. It was the 2010 World Championship was fought over the Korean Grand Prix. We had the Korean Grand Prix, and there were two more, the Brazilian and the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix to come. And there were 5 drivers. Going into this race, there were 5 drivers who could potentially be champion. And for any one of you who knows about Formula One, that's never the case. Normally it's dominated by one driver. Look at what's happening now with Max Verstappen. He's won it by about the 5th race. So this was a great year. So the pressure on each driver to deliver was immense. Now the race started very late in the day, because we had incredibly bad weather all weekend, and it was rivers of water. It was really, really, really a difficult weekend to work. The upshot of that, of course, is that it produced conditions in Parc Ferme, which is what we call the area after the race, where the driver celebrates. It was basically night. As it's basically night, or as it was basically night, I thought, right, well, I'm not going to go and stand with all the other photographers. There's a fence here that is pulled out, and the fence is put there, and you've got Fernando is standing on his Ferrari here, and then whoever was second is there, and whoever was third is here. So they're like a phalanx of cars. Between me, where I'm standing, this is shot on a 200mm lens, where I'm standing, between me and the Ferrari is all the other cars that finished in the minor placings are pulling up, and the drivers are getting out, and there's officials telling them where to park and moving them out of the way. So it's a real risk that if one person, you can imagine, if one person walked across close to me, shot gone. But he who dares wins. You know, you've got to sometimes push it, as you all know. And what I wanted to do was set a very slow shutter speed, so it's a 30th of a second. And of course, you're risking movement in the driver. You're slightly guessing where he's going to be, because with all the other cars, you can't actually see the Ferrari, so you've got to guess where he's going to pop up. And you've got to be damn quick, because he pops up, does his thing, and then he jumps off the car and runs into his team. All the Ferrari mechanics are over to the left. But Fernando, excuse me, Fernando is a brilliant celebrator of race wins. From his first race win to hopefully more, because he's still racing now. He understands that the more he gives, the more celebration he gives, the better it is for photographers and the TV, obviously, and his fans. What I hoped to get when he got out, because I was very confident he would celebrate, was what we call, I don't know if other people call it, but in Formula One we say we steal the flashes. We're stealing I'm not using a flash. I haven't taken a flash to a Grand Prix for probably 30 years. But with the TV lights and the flash of all my colleagues, I'm hoping with a longer exposure that if there is any movement, their kind of rim light that is there will give me that sharpness. I've got other photographers, 2 other photographers chose to do the same thing, and we're jostling and we're trying to stay still. I'm probably shouting, "Keep still," as I always am. And he got out and celebrated. When it popped up on the back of the camera, I hoped to get 3, maybe 4 stolen flashes. I couldn't believe that I'd got, 6 or 7? And a TV light at the end. And what I was and I still am, so happy about is the flare and the position of them. If this one had been there, it wouldn't work so well. So the fact that all came together is it's always a special picture, and everyone in Formula One who knows that race will instantly be able to tell you what race that was. About 2 months later, Fernando didn't win the world title that year. Phone rings. It's Fernando. That picture you took in Korea of me getting out of the car, can I have it, please? Of course, I said, well, what for? We did a deal on what he would give me and what I'd get out of the deal. Grand Prix drivers, like most sports stars, don't want to pay for anything, so you've got to kind of negotiate and get something out of them. So I did a big TIFF file because he wanted it particularly large. I didn't know what it was for. Sent it off to him. And one of the things I'd said to him to do is on social media, on your channels, because he's got millions of followers, can you put a picture of how you've used it? One morning it pops up. I think he messaged me and said, I'm going to do it today. It pops up. He was living in Dubai at the time. Now you can imagine how big his apartment was, and you can imagine how big his lounge wall was. And this gives you an insight into what Formula One drivers are like. There's him sat on the couch, looking up, and there's a life-size version of this on his wall. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't put life-size pictures of myself up in the front lounge for all your guests to enjoy. But it was a nice moment, and I have a good relationship with Fernando still to this day. Now, when I talk to young photographers, or older ones who perhaps want to do Formula One or motorsport as a whole, I always suggest to them the importance of telling a story. When you go to a race, whether that's a club race at the Dubai Autodrome here, or whether that's a Grand Prix in Jeddah next weekend, it doesn't matter. You've got to try and, or I think, tell a story of the weekend. And that story can include not just racing cars, but it includes the fans, the burger stands, the mechanics, the tools that they use, the flags, the general hullabaloo of a race weekend. And I get so many photographers asking me to review or want to be photographers if you like, asking me to review their folios, and they're just car. Now this picture is an example of how, personally, I'm always on the lookout for things like this. It's shot at the 2007 Italian Grand Prix. And I've never been someone who has named my pictures, because obviously in Formula One it's 2007, it's the Italian Grand Prix. That's a reference number. That's really all that people want to know. I would, though, if I was asked, call it evidence of violence, because that's what it is. The morning session, Kimi Räikkönen in his Ferrari was approaching what we call the Ascari chicane, doing probably 185, possibly 190 miles an hour. It's a really, really fantastically fast entry to a very quick left, right, left chicane. And something broke in the car. When he hit the brakes, they dabbed the brakes as they turned into the corner, something broke, and he sent him almost 90 degrees right into the wall. He hit the wall. This is kind of initially where he hit, and he ended up, the car is going that way. He ended up about 100, 120 yards further on top of the barriers. Got out, brushed himself down, and went back to the garage. He was absolutely fine, thank heavens. I saw this. I was at a different part of the circuit. I saw that happen. I was going to this area for qualifying, which was the Saturday afternoon session. So I got to the area, put my gear down, and I thought, well, this is where Kimi went off. So I leant over the wall and saw this. I thought, wow, that's a picture. It's like a, it looks like a piece of art, if you like. Or it often reminds me of the side of super tankers or freight ships where they've hit the dock. And normally you don't get them painted blue. The walls are, this is a concrete wall, obviously, which are pretty rare these days, but also they're normally covered in plastic awnings of sponsors. This was naked, save for the gorgeous scuffs of the tyre and the wheel rim of his car as it smashed into the wall and slid down at a breakneck speed. So I jumped over the wall. Of course, I looked around thinking, you're expressly not supposed to jump over the wall when it's close to the session starting. But I wasn't going to be stopped getting this picture. I jumped over the wall because the Italian marshals, they're pretty lax and they're having lunch and they're not really bothered. So I jumped over, crouched down, 50mm lens, looked for the best kind of scuff and the best, kind of patina and the best worn out section. Started to do a few shots, and I hear a car pull up behind. I think, oh crikey, that's got to be an official. It was the race director, Charlie Whiting, who's was a very important figure in the sport. And he wound down the window and said, Darren, do your stupid picture and get off the track now. So click, click, click. Okay, Charlie, no problem. I jumped over. And that's the story of that picture. It's one I particularly like, but I don't think if you saw it in isolation, you wouldn't necessarily think it has anything to do with motorsport. Now this is a Ferrari. Everyone knows that because it's red. And it's shot at the 2015 Singapore Grand Prix. It's Sebastian Vettel in his Ferrari. I'm sure most of you have been to Singapore. I'm a big fan of the place, the cleanliness, the kind of the skyscrapers, the kind of temple to capitalism that place is. But mostly people know it in the daytime. In Formula One, we know it only at night because it's a night Grand Prix. So you live this kind of really kind of strange life when you cover this race, especially when I fly from Auckland to there, because you've got to get on what we call European time, because it runs to a European kind of schedule in timings. So it's incredibly discombobulating as a race to work at in a kind of jet lag sense. It's hot, it's humid, it's sticky, it's close, it's noisy. There's skyscrapers all around. It's really a fantastic vista to work with the cars because the overhead lights, the kind of floodlights that ring the whole circuit, drop their light down, and it seems to make the cars come alive. We have a lot of races now where you've got nighttime races. But there's something about the Singapore event, I guess it's the whole kind of atmosphere of the city, that the cars look different to me. They kind of come alive. First Grand Prix in Singapore was 2008. I'd felt that. I'd never really got that across. As a photographer, I hadn't achieved what I wanted to achieve and delivered. So I went into 2015 thinking, right, let's really work on that. So I walked the circuit, and what I wanted to do was find somewhere that didn't have much extraneous light coming to light up the sides of the car, so that we'd just get some top light. Quite early on in the lap, there's an area where you've got trees behind the car, as you look there, and trees behind the photographer. So you're not getting lots of extraneous light to ruin the picture. They come out of the previous corner, very slow previous corner, and then with the hybrid engines, which Formula One have, the electric power plant, when it kicks in, they've got tremendous accelerative energy now. It's amazing to see. TV does a very bad job of showing that. So as he blasts out of the corner, you almost do this, I don't know whether it's a technical term, but a kind of whip pan. You pick the car up and then you come across. So it's quite difficult. You need a lot of cars keep on coming to get into a rhythm. Now, pictures like this rely on obviously being pretty relaxed because you want to be moving. You know, I often say to guys, think of, when you're doing a pan shot, think of what it's like as a golfer swings. You know, you see Seve Ballesteros or Gary Player, or I'm showing my age now, some of the newer ones, and they have a beautiful, smooth swing, the guys who are good at what they do. That's what I've kind of got in my mind, is to, you know, always follow through on the pan shot. But often, to be honest, one of the things that can mess up a pan shot is that the subject creates kind of tension in you. And when it's a Ferrari, or it's, say, Lewis Hamilton and his Mercedes, or it's, these days, if it's Max Verstappen and his Red Bull, or back in the day when it was Sebastian in his Ferrari, you tense up a bit because you think, oh, I've got to get this. And often you'd miss the shot. The lesser drivers, in the lesser cars, you'd almost just do that and get it sharp. You know, it was a weird thing. So I thought, right, what I'm going to do this year is not shoot the lesser cars, try and transpose that relaxed attitude onto the good guys. Well, it kind of worked. I'm still doing that these days. And when you take a picture like this, what you're trying to do always is get as much sharpness within the blur as you can. But the key is to get the helmet sharp, because obviously in a Formula One car, he's the focal point, he's the human element. So you want that sharpness in the helmet. It can be all a blur all around. But if the helmet's sharp, it's a usable picture. And what's so nice about this is that you've got I couldn't really have shot that. If I shot at 1,000th of a second, I couldn't really have got the kind of the laser-like lights that are licking around his helmet. They wouldn't have been any sharper at whatever shutter speed I would have used. And also you've got, I'm sure you can see where the visor is. And you've got a highlight there. Without that highlight, if you take it away, this kind of focal point goes, but it brings that human element. You know there's a guy in there, in this rocket ship looking. I always think about back to kind of Saturday morning pictures and kind of the old Flash Gordon stuff. It was black and white, but, you know, with sparks coming out the back with their rudimentary kind of spaceships. And that's what that represents to me. I've tried this picture subsequently. The next year, for instance, I got another nice picture of Sebastian, but behind his head there was a white sponsor's logo. So it killed the picture. So the challenge is, I guess, every year I go back to Singapore is to find something else that represents what that race means to me. I wonder how many of you know who this is. He's Ayrton Senna, who, for anyone who is passionate about motorsport, there is first, personally for me, there is no one above him. He was a Brazilian guy from Paulista from Sao Paulo. 3 times Formula One world champion, the end of the 80s and one in the early 90s. And he was just a special guy, a really special guy he had a driving style that was almost completely unique, stabbing the throttle. You could hear him coming. You knew that kind of qualifying on the race had really started when Senna was on track. He had charisma in bucket loads. I've been fortunate, like a lot of us, to photograph leaders of countries, and this is all when they visit the circuits, and they're guests of dignitaries or guests of the commercial partners. Schwarzenegger, Tom Cruise last year at the British Grand Prix, all these things, and you're trying to work with them to do things, but none of them had the charisma and the kind of stop time kind of charisma that he had. This is taken at the Brazilian Grand Prix in 1994. He's at the back of the garage. I was working for Rothmans, who were the sponsors of the team, so I had garage access. was photographing Senna talking to his engineer at the back of the garage. And suddenly there's an almighty crash. And it's a monsoon-like rainstorm. If you've been to Brazil, you know what it can rain like in that place. And Senna said to his engineer, I'm going to go to the front of the garage and have a look at the rivers that are running down the pit lane and see where the kind of puddles are on the circuit and that kind of thing. And he walked round, so I ran round behind him, put on an 80mm lens and crouched down below him and really trying to, with his signature hat, those of you that will know that he always wore this blue hat with the Nacional logo and the Ayrton Senna signature in yellow. It was his trademark. What I wanted to do was get the light at the top. So I'm moving, you know what it's like. You're just moving to try and get something perfect. The Interlagos circuit, which is the name of the place, is a bit old and decrepit, which gives it a ton of character. So you get these old lights. They're like something out of an antique shop. And they make this gorgeous green cast, which of course a lot of photographers are trying to get rid of, but if you can work with it, it's a nice thing. And he's standing looking at the rain, but also over here are grandstands full of his adoring fans who are screaming, shouting, waving flags and trying to get him to acknowledge them. He looked at the rain, he turned around, he got in the car, and he went out on circuit. And every other driver and every other car followed him because that was what would happen. If Senna's out on track, you better get out on track and learn what he's learning. This picture was taken 1 month before he died. He died live on TV at the San Marino Grand Prix, which was described by the guy who had the commercial rights of Formula One at the time as Jesus Christ dying live on television. Now that might sound overblown, but to people who follow Formula One and the whole of Brazil, that really was what it was like. 1 million people turned out in Sao Paulo for his funeral. So much like the Michael Schumacher picture, it's taken on a whole, or it almost immediately took on a different meaning to me because he died so soon afterwards. Much like the other shots of when I encourage people to take pictures, not just of cars, have a look at the people who are watching the race. This is taken at the 2018 Monaco Grand Prix. Those of you who know about Formula One will know it's Monaco because here is the small church which is called San Devot. And it gives its name to the first corner of the circuit, which is just here. All these people are looking down, trying to look up the start-finish straight, ready for the start of the Grand Prix. They pay unbelievable money to stand in these places. They're offices that generally are owned by businesses in Monaco, and they rent those out to guests. You can see at the top there's net jets. I shudder to think what that would have cost. I'm always intrigued as to why there's no one in that balcony, because that's just about the best one there is, the view that they've got down the straight. If I had to give it a name, I'd call it layer cake because it looks like a cake. But the inspiration for a picture like this comes from the photographers that are without the sport. So William Eggleston, Stephen Shaw, particularly Joel Sternfeld is a photographic hero of mine, and I'm trying to bring in those kind of elements of kind of slightly different look to the motorsport coverage. I tried it the previous year and a couple of years before that, but it hadn't worked because it was raining, so not many people on the balcony, or it was the light was too strong, so there's too much shadows. This kind of flat white light, flat grey light, which is quite typical of Monaco when we're there for the Grand Prix, is just made it work for me. So the final picture brings us almost right up to date. It was taken in the Las Vegas Grand Prix last November. Las Vegas, as soon as it was announced on the calendar, kind of a year and a half before, immediately in my head, I was, right, that is an opportunity for small cars and big lights. We all know what Las Vegas is like. Pretty ghastly, if you ask me, but photographically, it was going to give something. Max Verstappen, the reigning world champion, is on the strip. The logistics of what the sport did to close down such a big part of such a busy entertainment-led city was quite awe-inspiring. When you get to shoot at a Grand Prix, which is all about the city, what you're trying to do is negotiate to get into people's balconies. Like the previous picture, you're trying all the time to get into the best balconies. And of course, lots of kind of clients, they don't really want a messy photographer with all this gear knocking people's champagne glasses out the way, and then they've paid so much money for these balconies. But I managed to, by hook and by crook, managed to get into one. It's in the Cosmopolitan building, which I'd kind of thought, I didn't have a chance to go up beforehand, but I kind of thought that's just about right, because you've got the Montgolfier balloon of Paris, which I wanted to keep some register of, you can just about read it says Paris. You've got the bottom of the Eiffel Tower there, and kind of, gives a sense of the colors and the speed and the motion of what's happening. What's ideal when you go to shoot a race like this and do a picture like this, is that the car that you want the most, which is normally the world champion, obviously, you want the colors of the car to mirror the lights that surround it. Well, fortunately, you can see the colors of the Red Bull, especially because they had a special edition paint job for the Las Vegas Grand Prix, so it just lifted its colors a little bit, and it all came together well. The technique which I use to do it involves, it's almost like back in the day when you're in a black and white darkroom, which is where I started out, and printing for other Grand Prix photographers, and you'd have a little, next to your light table, you'd have a little tools that you'd fashion, dodging and burning. And I almost do that over the lens in a very long exposure. So that's how, you get this section, because people will say to me, well, how do you get this sharp and then all the movement there? Well, it's hands moving. Well, this hand is holding the camera, this hand is going crazy. It's a bit hit and miss, but when it comes off, it's a winner. So I go to Jeddah tomorrow for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, where this kind of picture will be on the menu because it's a night race. And really, as a little boy or as a teenager really, I used to go up to London in school holidays, go to Foyle's bookstore, which proudly above the door said, the world's largest bookshop. I don't know if it still is. And you'd go in this place, climb the rickety staircase all the way to the top, basically into the attic, and that was where the motorsport books were. And I used to grab the books that I wanted to see, sit on the floor and sit there for 2 hours and just thumb through the pages of the heroes that I wanted to emulate. Well, they were heroes to me, but funnily enough, they always seemed to be Japanese photographers, because they seem to focus more on that kind of movement and passion and exactly what it was that the sport means to me. So that's me finished. Thank you.